Well, let me start with the fact that we already own Bitcoin. There is Bitcoin in the U.S. asset forfeiture accounts. We're trying to find out how much Bitcoin and whether they are fully surrendered to U.S. custody. We think that could be the basis for the first year's installment of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We think the United States has held about 200,000 Bitcoin in asset forfeiture. What we don't know is how much of that the Biden administration was selling right before the Trump administration took office. So we have inquiries to the U.S. Marshal Service. I have talked to Pam Bondi about it. We are trying to find that information out now.
On that specifically, Bitcoiners will say, well, just look on the blockchain, would kind of be the answer. But this is obviously much more complex. Why can't people figure out how many we own?
Yeah, great question. This should be easy to figure out. It should be easy to figure out why a federal agency has 2 times more credit cards issued than there are employees in the agency. I mean, there's so much failure of just simple accounting and business practices in the federal government that it would shock you. It is inexcusable.
So odds that we get the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve?
My bets are that you'll see a state have a Bitcoin Strategic Reserve before the federal government. States are incubators of innovation. We're seeing the United Arab Emirates purchase Bitcoin. You're going to look at some of the sovereign wealth funds around the world who are not as tied up in a democratic republic like we are, be able to just make it so. The old Captain Picard statement on Star Trek, where he used to just say, make it so. They can do that in the UAE. Of course, we can't do that here. But there's a possibility that some of these things can be begun without statutory authorization. So we'll see what the White House is thinking about that. And then we'll hope to augment it in a way that provides authority by statute for the U.S. government to take gold certificates, which we hold. We hold them at about a 1974 value, which was, I don't know, $46 an ounce or some such thing, and then bring them to market value and then use that to buy Bitcoin. If we did that, we could probably buy 200,000 Bitcoin every year for 5 years, hold them for 20 years, and not use a single new taxpayer dollar to do it. So, this is a very doable thing. What we don't have is enough knowledgeable members of the House and Senate to have the comfort level to do this yet. And so that's where you can come in, literally talk to your senators and representatives, help them understand that Bitcoin is digital gold and why. Explain to them the scarcity of Bitcoin, the fact that Bitcoin is completely non-controlled by people, that it is utterly and completely decentralized, that it's infinitely divisible, that it has superior Bitcoin presence, that these are things that can be stored in wallets safely, whether stored for the federal government or by individuals on their own behalf. These are all things that are still questions that are outstanding in a lot of people's minds. So to the extent that sometimes we all, and I'm guilty of this myself, become a little bit of an echo chamber. I'm always talking to advocates and I'm an advocate of doing this too. I have to spend more time talking to people who either don't understand it and are open-minded, or are opposed but they don't know why. And there are a lot of those in the U.S. House and U.S. Senate. Now, I think that we're going to get a lot more help from this administration in making this an issue that's important to the president and the White House, because the people who are now at Treasury, who are at the regulatory agencies, are both knowledgeable and supportive. So we have a bigger cast of policymakers that are favorably inclined. We have to deploy them, but please deploy yourselves. Make yourselves advocates of a Bitcoin strategic reserve if you feel strongly, like I do, that when it is one of our strategic reserves, just like we have an oil strategic reserve. How many of you knew we had a strategic cheese reserve? Raise your hand if you knew that. A few people do. Okay. We have a strategic gold reserve. We hold about 5% of the world's gold in physical gold, in addition to those gold certificates. So make sure that this is not some out-of-the-box, unique reserve, that it can be part and parcel of other commodities that we believe are important for the United States to have as part of our portfolio that is fully diversified, whether it's land in the form of Bureau of Land Management, land, national parks, national forests, and so forth, or whether it's commodities like gold, oil, cheese, Bitcoin. The Bitcoin Act was filed last September in the last Congress, so people could see how it works and we could get some good ideas about how to make it better. We're trying to be transparent so we can get good feedback. We don't want people saying, well, you just blindsided me. I need more time on this. This is all going to be very transparent. And so once again, take pieces of legislation that you know exists. You can look them up on the websites. You can see summaries of them, and you can help your legislators understand when you think they're good or not. And if you think there are aspects of this legislation that need improvement, call my office. Chris Land is here, and Connor Brown is here. They're back in the corner. And we're happy to help you make improvements.
One of the things I heard many times from politicians over the years was, we can't embrace Bitcoin because the people who own Bitcoin will benefit from that. It seems like that changed though when all of a sudden the politicians realized that the people who owned Bitcoin may be willing to part with some of their hard-earned money and provide it to their campaigns.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden there seems to be a very simpatico relationship between politicians and the Bitcoin community. Talk a little bit about just the impact of what really I think maybe is a broader technology story, but definitely showed in the Bitcoin industry, where people just didn't participate in politics. They just said, hey, that's not my thing. I want to build my company. I want to focus on what I'm doing. I continue to say it feels like the political apparatus kind of came for them. And so they said, we can either ignore it and continue to get taken advantage of, or we can participate. And that participation had a profound impact in this last election cycle and seems to have really changed a lot of politicians' minds about what they wanted to do in terms of interfacing with the Bitcoin community.
I think you absolutely nailed it. I think that's what happened. You know, Bitcoiners know that this is freedom money, that it's a commodity, that you don't need a regulatory framework. And that you want to have your individual wallets. It's your property. It's none of the government's business, and leave us alone. I totally get that. I feel that way too. The government didn't feel that way 4 years ago. They want to tax Bitcoin miners when it's coming out of the computer and when you sell it. Double taxation. They wanted to impose requirements that Bitcoin miners report the energy that they were consuming in order to mine Bitcoin, even though they would never do that to a cloud computing center that's owned by a major company. Everywhere you looked in the regulatory framework, it was hostile. And the hostility was pointed at not just Bitcoin, but other digital assets, Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, all the stuff. But Bitcoin was caught up in that. And so if you have companies that are custodying multiple assets or lending, using some of these assets as collateral or whatever, Bitcoin was caught up in it. And the fact that this community started engaging with politicians, and it is a pathetic statement that politicians respond to campaign contributions. And pathetic or not, it's true. And so the fact that this community engaged in the political process in the last election got people's attention.